Matthew 6:19 through 21. Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. When I graduated from college, I was able to secure an entry-level position at an engineering firm, and from the beginning, I viewed it as a challenge that I needed to overcome. Throughout my entire life, I had believed that I had been doubted by others, and that it was up to me to prove my worth. Though no one expected me to do anything more than the bare minimum at this company, I worked hard and found satisfaction knowing that I was turning heads with my work ethic and natural ability to succeed. This feeling of success fueled me and my thought life, and I could feel the pride swelling up in my heart. As the opportunities continued to be presented and more responsibility was offered, I began to view myself as a big shot. I believed I was the personification of the common phrase, "the sky's the limit," and thought it was only a matter of time before I was at the top of the corporate ladder. And then, God intervened. Being on the other side of the trial, I can honestly say that I am truly grateful that God does intervene in our lives. Because when you're in the middle of a struggle in life, you lose perspective. You take on tunnel vision and begin to narrow your field of vision to where the trial you are experiencing becomes the only thing that you're able to see. God, meanwhile, is up in heaven, directing us along the way and can see when we lose our way. It's because of his great love for us that he offers mercy and grace to intervene and bring peace and clarity when we need it the most. So what happened? After a few years, my management offered me a pathway to a managerial position, but it would take a few years to get there if I had the patience to wait for it. Though it was a good opportunity, I strongly believe that I deserved to progress much faster than a few years, and found what I perceived to be a better opportunity to get a job at a local university to pursue my graduate degree for cheap and be on the fast track to a better career, while looking good doing it by having an MBA degree in hand. When I graduated 2 years later with my degree, I thought that it was time to reap the benefits of my hard work and that job opportunities would just come knocking at my door without any effort. I began to apply to high-level positions and companies, and to my surprise, no one was interested. Not being able to accept this unexpected result, I began to apply for lower positions as well, but I received the same cold shoulder time and time again. It's embarrassing to admit, but even in those moments of humility where I had to pick up my ego that laid crushed on the floor time and time again, I refused to let go and admit that God had a better plan for my life than I did. I lacked the perspective to realize that I had that tunnel vision of what I perceived was the best for my life, and that maybe, just maybe, God had something better in mind. I came to the realization that, just as this passage in Matthew talks about, the treasure that I was storing up for my life was the dream of success, wealth, and admiration, and that it was destroying me. We've all experienced the repercussions that bad decisions we make in one area of our lives can have on other areas of our lives as well. For example, every time that I would get a rejection email, I would become angry and depressed, and my marriage would suffer because I refused to be consoled or have the desire to interact with my wife for sometimes days afterwards. Because I had placed such importance on making myself into a household name and reaching the level of success that I believed I was capable of, I was demonstrating that it was indeed what I valued the most. God began the process of chipping away at my pride and ego, and it genuinely did feel like a thief came in and stole my joy, and that I didn't know what to do once it was gone. I love Psalm 121, which says, "I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore." The writer of the psalm begins by stating a profound lesson. My help comes from the Lord. But it also requires that I look up to see him. I had expected the Lord to come to my aid and provide a way for me to be successful, but I was making it clear that I was attempting to do it all in my own strength, by achieving success and accomplishments instead of looking to the Lord. My eyes were fixed on my tunnel vision instead of looking up to acquire direction from God. As a result, my heart had become prideful. My treasure had been built up in all the wrong things, and I had become like the foolish man who built his house on the sand in Matthew 7:26. Sadly, it took a great deal of failure and rejection to bring about the humility and realization of my need for God, but it could have been so much easier had I looked to him for direction earlier. The encouragement for us, though, is that the psalm affirms a great truth about God in that he is not only able to watch over us, protect us, and bless us, but that he has promised it to us. When we fix our eyes on the Lord and are storing up our treasures in heaven instead, we can truly rest and experience joy that we would not be able to experience otherwise. When I can humble myself and admit that God sees the grand scheme of things when I can only see what's in front of me, it allows me to have a completely different perspective on the trials I experience, contentment with the season of life I'm in, and a joy and expectation for what God is going to do next. I challenge you to ask yourself today the question, where are my treasures stored in my life? Are you finding that your satisfaction and joy in the things that you can achieve, the possessions you have, or the status that you have in the world? Or do you find your treasure in the promises of God? If you're like me and you find yourself in a place of brokenness, disappointment, and confusion, take heart knowing that God has greater plans for your life. He has promised to uphold, protect, and strengthen you, but it takes an intentional act of humility and effort to lift our eyes to see him. And effectively admitting that we cannot do this on our own. It's difficult to do, painful, and may even feel like you're desperate to others. But there is great strength in recognizing our weakness and giving it to God. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me."